All right, good morning, everyone. A special edition of Hobby Quick Hits, our Monday podcast that usually is audio only and comes out, obviously, as I said, on Mondays. But we're doing a live Sunday morning special edition today. This will also air. You may be listening to this on Monday morning. We're doing this live today, Sunday, and joined by three great guys. Ray from Philly, Scott from Tradition, and Bart's Cards from the Sports Card Hall of Fame Network. And this we did this last year on Sports Card Nation side of the house with their first annual Football Card Hall of Fame induction, and obviously that would make this the second annual uh, Hall of Fame card induction. 45 cards for you guys to vote on for this year's uh, class, and I'll kick it. Morning, everybody. I'll kick it over to Ray to kind of intro what you guys are doing and how it works in the process, where to go, obviously to vote on your favorite cards for this year's class.
Well, thanks, John. Thanks for having us on again this year. Um, myself and Victor, the rookie card specialist, and Mike, this baseball card life, we started the Sports Card Hall of Fame network a few years ago with the intentions of having a sports card Hall of Fame for each sport. And we started with just the Baseball Card Hall of Fame a few years back. And last year, we finally got started on the second sport, and we brought in Scott of Scott's cards, Scott of Scotty Tradition, and Bart of Bart's cards to lead the way as the commissioners for the Football Card Hall of Fame. And last year was a big success. We had a really nice turnout for people voting for the first year. So we're hoping to keep this thing going and let it grow and bring in other sports and eventually basketball and hockey and so forth. So yeah, Scott and Bart did a fabulous job last year with picking cards to be on the ballot, and this year uh, it's going to be another fun year. So I'm looking forward to seeing everyone's reactions and seeing a big turnout this year.
Like I said last year, guys, this is people probably think this is easier than it looks. You guys probably make it look more seamless. Like any sort of Hall of Fame induction, right? You've got to narrow down a list. You could probably you make 100 card list if you wanted to or needed to or had to, and now you have 45, and only 10 are getting in. With that being said, too, I want to name the 10 that are in from last year's induction, but in order by year. 1933 Sport Kings Jim Thorpe, 1933 Sports Kings Red Grange, 1935 National Chico Bronco Nagurski, the 57 tops Bart Starr, 57 tops Unitas, 58 tops Jim Brown, 65 tops Joe Namath, 1976 tops Walter Payton, 1981 tops Montana, and 1986 tops Jerry Rice. So that's the inaugural class. Will forever be. And but I don't know if you guys. There's 45 cards on the ballot. We're gonna put graphics and talk about some more in depth. But in fairness to all 45 cards, if someone wants to just read them, kind of in the manner I did with the 10 that are in, just the 45 up for in potential induction. If you want to just kind of just to be fair to all 45, if you want to, I don't know who wants to do it, but kind of go through those.
Well, let's see. I guess Bart or Scott will probably lead the way in that. Uh, I think Bart said he's lost sound.
Okay. Uh, uh, all right. I'll read them. I got them here. Again, I believe these are by year. 1888 N162 Goodwin's champion Harry Beecher. 35 Chickle Clark Hinkle. 35 Chickle Newt Rockney. 48 Bowman, Kenny Washington. 48 Leaf, Bobby Lane. 48 Leaf, Chuck Bednarik. 48 Leaf, Sammy Baugh. 48 Leaf, Sid Luckman. 50 Bowman, Elroy Crazy Legs Hirsch. 50 Bowman, Otto Graham. 50 Bowman, Y.A. Tittle. 50 Tops Feltbacks, Joe Paterno. 51 Bowman, Emlyn Tunnell. 51 Bowman, Norm Van Brocklin. 51 Bowman, Tom Landry Rookie. 52 Bowman, Large Frank Gifford. A lot of these are rookies. I'm not going to say rookie after every one. 55 Tops All-American Don Hudson. 55 Tops All-American The Four Horsemen. 55 Tops All-American Jim Thorpe. 57 Tops Paul Horning. 62 Tops Ernie Davis. 62 Tops Fran Tarkington. 62 Tops Dicka. 63 Fleer Len Dawson. 63 Tops Bob Lilly. 63 Tops Ray Nitschke. 66 Philadelphia Dick Buckus. 66 Philadelphia Gail Sayers. 68 Tops Bob Greasy. 70 Tops OJ Simpson. 71 Tops Terry Bradshaw. 72 Tops Roger Staubach. 79 Tops Earl Campbell. 82 Tops Lawrence Taylor. From 84 Tops Marino and Elway. From the 84 USFL set, both Reggie White, Steve Young. 89 score Barry Sanders. The incredibly tough 1990 Pro Set Vince Lombardi Trophy Hologram. The 90 score supplemental Emmett. The 98 SP Authentic Peyton Manning. 2000, both 2000 playoff contenders and SP Authentic Tom Brady. And last but not least, the 2017 Panini Prism Patrick Mahomes. So a pretty eclectic group from old to young there, and it we'll bring Bart. I think you all right? Everything good?
Back in the game.
All right, all right. Talk a little bit about, obviously some of the cards on the ballot are ones that didn't get in last year, and then you have some new ones. Talk about the process. And while like I said in the intro, guys, you make it look seamless, it's not as easy as you make it look. Talk about the process and some of the difficulties with that, and how much are you hearing feedback from other people like, hey, this card's, you got to have this on the ballot this year? You get a lot of that.
Well, we started thinking it was going to be 50 cards for that inaugural class. And then just with the back and forth of me and Scott, we realized we didn't want to water down the ballot too much. And we didn't want to have, there were just certain cards that we didn't think should compete for the first ballot. And so we only kind of had 45 strong candidates that we thought was that way. So kind of that's how the number of the ballot is. And then we just want to keep the ballot fresh. So, bottom couple go out, and then 15 new ones come in to keep the ballot at 45. And so we kind of just, me and Scott went on our own. Hey, come up with about 15 that you think. And then we just got together and collaborated. I think about 7 or 8 of those were pretty easy. We either had them or, yep, I agree with you on that one. And then so it was just a little bit of haggling back and forth for the last couple to, kind of round out the ballot and make some diversity, make sure it was, kind of appealed to a broad base of voters.
And I got to unmute my mic. Scott, how much, like Bart just said, some of them are kind of almost no-brainers, and then you have some of those where there can be some debate. I guess my question to you is, how spirited does that debate get at all? And is there hey, let's put this card in this year and we'll revisit that? Is there sort of agreements or compromises along those kind of lines?
Yeah, I think there's some definitely compromises. We came up with 2 different lists of about 15, and there was some overlap, but there was some others that we had not in common. And I think that once we heard the other person's list, we were able to. For me, there was some on Bart's list. I was like, oh yeah, I hadn't considered that one, and he may have felt the same about my list. And we eventually just arrived at 15. And there was also some that last year we had comments on that people, really felt strongly about being on the list. The 1888 Beecher was one of those cards that we had definitely got comments on last year that felt should have been included on the ballot. And so that was one of the reasons we had that one. Of course, there's
62 Ernie Davis. Yeah, same.
the Ernie Davis. I had at least one comment, but possibly a few to be on the list from last year as well. So that got included. And we just made up a list of 15. We think they're all great cards and cards that will probably eventually all make into the Hall of Fame.
Well, I'm going to stick up for you guys. Just to keep in mind, Joe DiMaggio didn't get into the Baseball Hall of Fame till his third ballot, and I don't think anyone will argue that he's a third ballot Hall of Famer. Probably a definite. I don't know what happened there, just timing and whoever was in that class. So, so you miss things, and 1888. We're talking. 135 years ago with some quick math. So you get a pass. You get a pass for me there. I'm not going to beat you up on that. What I'd like to do, guys, we're not going to go through all. We mentioned all 45 cards. I'm not going to put all the 45 cards graphics. I just took some screenshots of some that I thought would be interesting dialogue. I'll put those on the screen. So, in some cases, they're usually 2 cards in the one slide, and we can kind of talk about them. You guys can interject any of your comments, what you thought, maybe behind the scenes part of the process, how these cards made it. If they're return cards from last year, and you want to, mention that as well. So these are in no full disclosure. These are in no particular order. These will not be in order by year. Or anything like that. So let me put the first slide up here, and it's the 2 Tom Brady rookie cards, SP Authentic, playoff contenders. Obviously iconic cards, even though they're of the more recent variety. But even that, we forget how long Tom Brady. These cards are now 24 years old, or almost 24 years old. We think of them as sort of pretty new, but 24 years is a long time. I'm married 25, so I know exactly what a long time is, guys. And so a lot of other people will at first thought was, oh, new car, these are new. I guess they're new compared to some of the vintage ride, but Tom Brady's been retired a couple seasons now. Thoughts here on Brady? I'm going to pull the slide off the screen, and then we can kind of discuss these cards.
Well, I was never a fan, obviously, but he's the GOAT, and there's no question about it. And then as far as his hobby stature, it's tremendous, especially for the modern football era. The 2000 contenders is, it's tough to see the auto, which is tough. Contenders came out in 98, and Randy Moss and Peyton Manning kind of carried it. But they kind of just carried all the product of that year. And so contenders didn't really make his niche just yet. And then that 2000 contenders made it a set to stay, and that we all, look forward to each year. And then the SP Authentic, nice and clean, a high-end product of its day, and obviously still very expensive, and a numbered product as well out of 2000. So kind of neat, kind of a, chase-ish base card, and still tough to get. The boxes cost you a couple $100 back then, and now probably couple $100 for a pack. So pretty cool cards. They put football on another atmosphere as far as the prices that get fetched for the hobby cards.
Yeah, Scott, I'll ask you this question, or even Ray, or whoever wants to answer it. How much? Obviously, those are 2 very expensive cards. A lot of these cards are going to have value just because of their significance. How much does the value that one card may have over another one? How much does that come into play when coming down to that final, candidate list?
I think more than value, just the sort of hobby recognition of the card plays a big role. The SP Authentic card is the card that the PSA set registry uses as Tom Brady's rookie card for almost every set. So that has a wide array of likability for a lot of collectors, and so that's why that one gets on the list. And then the auto card certainly the value of that card in particular has a lot to do with why that card is on the list. It was really one of the first cards to fetch six figures in the football card world, so that's why that one gets on the list.
Yeah, and I would argue that Contenders card probably, pushed the hobby to do things like grade autos separately and stuff like that, because, I could have had a beat up Contenders, but if the auto's all the way on card, then I'm getting a BGS 7 with a 10 auto or a PSA 7 with a 10 auto. And that brought some validity to that type of grading too. So a card like that can change a lot of things.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, guys, we'll go to the next two cards here. The one thing I want to say, I've already cast my ballot, full transparency and disclosure. I will try not to give away necessarily who I voted for. It'll probably, if you're good at reading between the lines, you probably could figure out here and there maybe some of where my ballot was cast. But I'm gonna try to keep my cards close to the vest, pun intended there. But let's go to the next two cards for up for discussion. Again, these are in no particular order. We have the 84 USFL set with the Reggie White and Steve Young rookie cards as it's their first appearance on cardboard. I know they had Topps cards later on, but anyone knows if you're looking for that first card, this is where it's at. It's a limited brand, a limited release, and so you see a lot less of these than you do of their first Topps counterparts. I know, Scott, is probably rooting for at least one of these cards, being a Packers fan. But your any commentary with USFL cards? And I mean, these are two obviously football Hall of Famers, and Reggie White, arguably one of the greatest defensive players in NFL history.
Yeah, it's just amazing. The USFL had some pretty great players there for a couple of years, between like Reggie White, Steve Young, Jim Kelly's of the world. There's others as well. And, these cards are just kind of cool. They're like red, white, and blue shaped with the USFL. They're very tough for centering and chipping with the magenta background. So finding them in good condition can be difficult. And, Bart can probably speak more to the Young. But as far as the White goes, I just love that classic portrait pose. Just him.
Yeah, my bad there too. I did the whole White diatribe, and there's Young. Both of it. I got a feeling. I know you guys voted. I know you voted for this. Who voted for this card? At least two of you. So, but yeah, good. But go ahead, Bart. Take the other card, if you will.
Well, I will give the caveat that neither Scotty or I vote on the ballot, so we try not to get
all right. Well, you can always do it anonymously.
Yeah,
I
love them. They're kind of neat. They didn't come in packs; they came in a box. So if you got the box, you got all of them. It's just whether they came in centered or anything like that, and whether you worried about that back in 1984 as well. But two awesome players. I'm partial to the Reggie White as far as the card goes itself and the caliber of player. I'm a big fan of Steve Young. He'll get in maybe not this year, but in a year or two. Reggie, I push a little bit harder on that. But, just having showboats written across the front of that and stuff, just the names and everything like that. It just, it's kind of an era that we don't want to forget, even though, each year kind of slowly gets forgotten. So those cards kind of bring that back up, and it's pretty neat.
All right, guys, let me pull up the next slide as we go through these. Again, not in any kind of order. This is one card, a one-card slide here, but a big one, the 17 Prism Patrick Mahomes rookie card. Obviously, he's actually playing today. I call him one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play, and I know it's early yet, but to me, that's how good he is, guys. I think, bar an injury or something catastrophic, I think when his career does end, he's going to be right there with the Montanas, Brady's, and guys like that, where we can debate who's the greatest quarterback in NFL history. I think there's at least a few more rings probably in his future, whether it happens this year, but eventually. And again, a newer card. You're looking at a card that's not quite 7 years old yet, but it's already iconic, already important, and he's got a pretty good amount of years left to play, right? And if what I think's going to happen happens, like I just said, with a few more rings and records and that sort of thing, that card's going to even become more in the forefront. Obviously, you said you guys can't vote. I actually forgot about that from last year, so my bad there. Do you think the age of this card only being 7 years old, an active player, how do you think that will affect the voting or not necessarily?
Yeah, I'm kind of intrigued myself. It is a really cool card, and obviously Mahomes has got 2 Super Bowls under his belt already, and so he does have a lot of luster out there already. But if you look at last year's ballot, it was definitely slanted more towards great vintage cards. None of the Brady cards got in last year, even though those are just amazing cards in the hobby. So I'm interested to see where this year 2 goes and to see if a card like Mahomes gets some consideration. We definitely wanted to cast a wide net for this ballot. So that's why you have the 1888 feature on there, and then you have a card from 2017, just to kind of capture all of it. And if you're going to have a modern card on there, Mahomes was the guy, in our opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. We both thought, it should be represented on the ballot, but, we would expect that there's a good number of cards that didn't get in that first year that, still are, in the front of the line as far as that one goes. We joked talking about it on a previous video. I don't see anybody, at least in our age circles, voting that Mahomes card in over a Dick Butkus or something like that, and there's a whole host of other good cards on there. But it is a tremendous card from a tremendous player. But, in the hobby itself, it's significant. We lost, Topps Chrome in 2015. 2016 we had Prism, but then we also had things like Donruss Optic coming out, and who was going to be the next, or what was going to be the next big set. And then I think that card and then his performance with all the rookies being just actual Prism cards like this refractor chase cards of earlier, just brought a whole lot of popularity, and it solidified Prism as the go-to product now as far as key for set registries or just the most recognized card. So both parts there, the player and the card. We'd love to see, the voting there and see, if the younger demographic is jumping in on this one, because they may not recognize some of these older cards like they would this one. So that's kind of the neat piece of seeing the results.
Do you think, so you mentioned with Brady being on the ballot last year, we're not getting in. Do you think almost like, a regular player Hall of Fame vote, like, depending on who's on the ballot will kind of determine what year you might get in or not get in. Do you think with the 2 Bradys, you think Mahomes will have to wait till those 2 get in or not necessarily?
Not necessarily. I think he's going to have to wait for one of the Bradys to get in, I think. There was a pretty big disparity between the contenders and the SB Authentic last year. We'll see how that turns up this year, but I would say I can't imagine anybody voting for the Mahomes and not voting for the Brady, at least on the same ballot. And so there should be some waiting there, but probably not a ton. They're both pretty strong cards of the modern era.
I agree.
All right, guys, let's go. We'll kind of move briskly. We'll go to the next slide here. 2 cards again. Most people just have to see these. They know what they are, right? From the 84 top set, Marino and Elway rookie cards. This set, as most know, you guys know, classically off-centered cards. So when you find a centered version of these, it's most likely in a plastic slab with a grade on it and a high one and a high price tag. But iconic cards, two great players, right? When we're breaking down the players, Elway has a ring. Marino got to the Super Bowl in his rookie season, didn't win it, and then everyone kind of was a foregone conclusion. Oh, he'll be back. It never happened. People who like to look at rings to greatness will point to that. I still feel like Dan Marino is one of the greatest quarterbacks to play the game, and we could probably say the greatest quarterback to play the game who doesn't have a Super Bowl ring. But these cards are iconic and condition sensitive cards. I guess you can speak to these, but how much does the fact that they're traditionally off-centered plays into whether someone votes for them or not? I would probably say not much, if at all. Do you kind of take the same line or not necessarily?
I just think these are two iconic cards from the mid '80s. Where a lot of collectors were growing up in that 1980s time period, and they can think back to these football cards. And they're two kind of franchise quarterbacks for their specific teams that kind of pull that scent. So that's, I think, plays a bigger role than the centering itself. But I don't know if you would agree with that, Bart. But that's just my take on it.
I think it's a little of both. I think if you were looking for these cards and you were searching for these cards, whether it was on eBay or when you were younger at shows and stuff before eBay was around, I think some of that chase probably built up some popularity and some recognizability. You go looking for a card and you find the one you want immediately upon looking for it. And maybe it's probably not as popular for you, right? You didn't have the thrill of the chase or the thrill of the hunt there. But with those two cards and many others, if you were doing that, then how many you've seen and sifted through builds up some, mental muscle memory there that probably in the long term creates some popularity. So that should help the voting. But they're just two awesome players as well from a well-designed set, regardless of quality control there. So they do get some recognition just based on that.
It's a good set. There's other Hall of Famers too. Isn't Dickerson in that set as well? Howie Long.
Howie Long. Yep. Yeah, that's a great set. It's piggybacking off what Bart said. Just too bad the QC that year for whatever reason. Maybe they went on strike too. But yeah, just every time, as a dealer, I'm set up and someone like, hey, you're buying and they hand me those cards and they're just traditionally so off center. It's sometimes it's frustrating. It's not the person's fault. Yeah. So, all right, guys, we'll go to the next slide here. Again, another iconic card, 1966 Philadelphia, Gale Sayers, rookie. Gale Sayers, I know his career was a little shorter due to injuries, but obvious Hall of Famer, iconic player. I would be shocked if this card didn't get in here on the second year, but that's why the voting takes place. But what say you guys?
Yeah.
I don't think it got the popularity we probably expected to last year. Whether that's the Bears fans didn't show out or, 5 years in the league just doesn't do it for some folks. I think the card itself is absolutely beautiful. Maybe you will not, the player depicted as far as his, obviously had tremendous impact as a Hall of Famer, but comparatively to some other people's careers. But beautiful pose, beautiful color contrast with the Bears uniform, nice white bordered card in the 60s. So it's pretty cool. I'm a fan. I don't know if it gets into the second class, though.
Yeah, I actually think it probably might get into the second class. We'll see. It's just such an iconic pose. Whether it gets towards the middle or bottom of the list, I think it has a shot at least to get into this class. I guess we'll see.
Yeah, it's funny. That is a great pose. Like the NBA logo is Jerry West. The NFL is the shield. But if they ever wanted to use like a player silhouette, that would be a candidate. One of the final candidates for that logo if the NFL ever did something like that. I'm kind of. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out. But I'd be surprised too, Scott, if this didn't get in this year. But that's why you have the voting to see what the majority say, and it'll be interesting to see how that turns out. All right, next slide here. Two iconic cards for different reasons. The '89 score, Barry Sanders rookie, and something, unfortunately, he never got to win or even play for the 1990 Pro Set Lombardi Trophy. I thought it was pretty funny, these kind of being on the same slide. The Lions are hoping to change that this year at the time of recording. We'll see if that plays out. But Barry Sanders, I always call him one of the most underrated players, even though he's revered. I sometimes think because he was playing pretty much parallel with Emmett, and Emmett breaking sort of the all-time rushing record. I thought he sort of didn't get the accolades. He also retired fairly young as well. I think that didn't, help him. But anyone that was a fan of football back then, watched him play, will not argue the greatness of Barry. And the Pro Set Lombardi Trophy card, I opened a lot of that product. I can tell you, never pulled that card. I'm trying to think, rack my memory, guys. I don't even think, even in my store days and my dealer days, I don't think I've even ever owned a card. So very tough card to acquire. I'll get your thoughts on this, but I want to kind of start with the Lombardi hologram card, just because of how rare it actually is and short printed it is. Do you think that may even hurt its chances at induction? Like, we all know the significance of the card, but there's probably people who will see that on the ballot. Not everybody, but there'll be some people who see that card on the ballot and say, "What is that?" Probably younger people as well. Like, what's it? They'll probably have to Google, 1990 Pro Set Lombardi Trophy hologram to find out more about it. Yeah, I guess two-pronged question. Do you think that will hurt its chances at induction, at least for this year? And might it not get in just because not enough people either own it or know about it?
I don't know if we added it to the ballot expecting it to get in this year, but this was one that Scotty brought up on his list, and I was like, oh, yeah, that's a good one to add. I just think it does a tremendous job in well-rounding our ballot, and then hopefully, and this is part of the goal of the Sports Card Hall of Fame Network and everything, is to promote, the hobby and get you aware of some things, remind you of some cards, whatever. So hopefully we build some momentum potentially for it, but I don't know if it'll, show up on the ballot this year and race to the front. But it's an awesome card. I opened a crap ton of 1990 Pro Set as a kid. I for years didn't believe that this card existed because I had never seen it. And because of the ballot and because, Scotty reminded me of it and everything, I bought this about a week ago in a PSA 7, and I'm pretty excited about it.
That's cool. That's right. I was not a kid. I was 18 in 1990. It was just as hard for an 18-year-old kid, if you will, or young adult to, like I said, I never pulled it. I don't remember ever even owning it as a dealer or during my shop days. So congrats on the recent acquisition there. You just don't see them that often. Bart mentioned, Scott, that was your on your list that you brought to the table. Talk a little bit about it. Like, what resonates for you with that card?
It's just something different. There's not a lot of cards with just a trophy on it that I can recall, and oddly enough, it's very hard to find. I think I don't even think there's been like a PSA Gem Mint 10 graded, so it's not that old of a card, but it's very condition sensitive, and 10,000 is not like a small number. I think that's the number that was inserted, but there was a lot of Pro Set. So that 10,000 number gets really diluted at the end of the day. So I just thought it was a good opportunity to kind of educate, as well as put a unique card on there that it's got the trophy on it. So, I mean, I just think that's a cool potential card that might eventually get in. I don't think we're expecting it to get in, as Bart mentioned, but kind of a unique card that we wanted to educate people on.
Yeah, it was probably the case of, trying new things in the 90s, right? I don't think there was a hologram card before that. Upper Deck had tiny little ones on the back of cards in '89 and stuff, but to have the full front of that card, that's why you see some surface issues and stuff, and the grades are a little rough. But yeah, it shows a trajectory into trying new things in the 90s as well. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it was the catalyst for Upper Deck eventually putting those team holograms into their products. I think that was the example that they said, "Hey, let's make some team ones." I wonder how many people pulled that card and just thought, it's a trophy. Like, how many are like, regardless of how many they printed, how many like got thrown out or crumpled up or just tossed to the side and maybe sitting somewhere and people don't realize kind of what they're sitting on, right? It's kind of crazy when you think about that.
The pro set checklists were huge, and then there was random extra print runs that had extra cards and extra photos, and there'd be like card number 781 Alpha, Bravo, and Charlie. Like they had a bunch of different ones that would show up, and errors and uncorrected errors. You didn't know what you were getting a lot of times, and if it was a cheaper product, so if you're a kid, absolutely those types of things can happen even more so, right? You're just looking for your favorite players, your favorite team.
Yeah, and Pro Set was really the first time, it wasn't the first time, but the first time I really heard like the term master set, because with all these errors and variations, right, people were like, I got to get one of every card, right? And so they're like, hey, I'm trying to do the Pro Set master set and get one of every different version, variety, including the Lombardi trophy card, the hologram card. So that made putting that master set together, the degree of difficulty went up there, guys. Let's, I don't want to talk just about the Lombardi trophy, but let's talk about the other guy on that slide, the 89 score, Barry. Like I said, when I had the slide up, one of the greatest running backs ever to play the game. Sort of like Marino, right? Viewed as like, hey, never, one of the greatest at his position, never to hold up the Lombardi trophy. That card again, I'll be surprised that don't get in here. I think last year, with the class, it was on the outside looking in. You think this is the year for that card, or you think it may even have to wait another year?
Yeah, I think it may have to wait another year. I just think that there's a little bit of a slant towards more vintage cards getting in, and I think it might be just a little too new. I do like the card. It's a great portrait pose of Barry Sanders, and he's just one of those mythical almost figures because he did leave so early. He just left us. He kind of pulled a George Costanza and went out on top, and he left us wanting more. So he has that little bit of mythical kind of nature to him. So it's a great card, and people definitely hold him in high regard. But whether it gets in this year, I think I would be surprised. But I've been surprised before, so we'll see.
Yeah,
go ahead.
The cut line there. It's not a good pose, but everything else is awesome, right? Like Barry Sanders, best running back I ever saw. And Christian McCaffrey led the league in rushing this year, and Barry averaged that more than that for 10 consecutive years and then walked away. And McCaffrey led it by a couple 100 yards this year, which is just wild numbers for what Barry Sanders did. 89 score, we didn't have multiple sets through the 80s like baseball did. That was the first year we started seeing more, and that was the higher end product. So it was kind of a big deal, colored borders and all those things. Wish they'd have picked a better picture. If they'd have put his 90 tops or his 89 tops picture on the 89 score, we might have had a different ball game. But it is
I'm a sucker for big close-ups, especially in football, because a lot of times they're wearing the helmet so much, so that doesn't bother me as much. Like I get it, like it's not like that game we just talked about, the Gale Sayers 66 Philadelphia, right, and that great pose and that great shot. I like both, I guess. It doesn't bother me as much, as you would have liked to see a better pose, but I get it. You know what I mean?
Just a little bit more. It doesn't, even if it's a portrait, like give me a little bit more of the jerseys. Let me see some more lines.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
I agree with that. Yeah. If you didn't know he played on the Lions, you would have, you wouldn't have known. Right. So, yeah, I agree with you that much. And, piggybacking off what Scott said, not only did he retire kind of early, and he just went out of the limelight. He didn't do commercials. He wasn't appearing on like pregame shows, or he didn't get into the media. He just kind of disappeared. Like you said, that factored into the mystique, Scott, there as well. Now we're seeing more of them again with sort of the resurgence of the Lions, and I'm kind of like that it took the resurgence of the Lions to we get to see Barry again, and he's a
Plus,
funny dude.
There's a documentary that just came out on Barry
Yeah.
Sanders that was fantastic.
Yeah,
It's really
yeah,
good. He explains why he literally just poofed, walked away.
Yeah, and I'm glad to see him back getting and sort of getting some of that deserved recognition, even a little bit after the fact. And he's while he's quiet and kind of shy guy, he's got a dry sense of humor too. So it's good to see him back, and hopefully we see more of him. I think he's just sort of got a lot of that sort of charisma about him, because we don't get an over. I love Peyton Manning, but you change the channel just two, you go up twice, you're going to see him on some, whether it be a commercial or some kind of show, you see him, and he's hilarious too. You don't get that with Barry. So when you do see him, you sort of appreciate the fact that you do. All right, let's go to the next slide here, guys. We'll kind of move kind of quickly. 79 tops, Earl Campbell rookie, 82 tops. LT rookie. Earl Campbell, another running back that, as a Steeler fan, believe me, I saw him up close and personal, and we'd probably have a few more rings if it wasn't for Earl Campbell. And just a great player that I don't think, again, injuries kind of cut his career shorter, just his running style. He was just a bruiser, wouldn't really avoid contact, would just go to run you over and carry you. So he doesn't get enough credit for the running back he was. LT, arguably one of the best defensive players of all time. Some off the field issues, as we all know about. I guess we'll start there. How much does the off the field stuff you think? I know it does sometimes play in the the real Hall of Fame, whether they get inducted. How much of it do you think it plays on the card side of the house or not?
I would say it depends on the off the field. For LT, a little recreational activity when he was younger probably doesn't hurt him quite as much. We kind of want our, defensive people a little crazy and stuff like that. But when he goes a little too far, potentially with like O.J. Simpson, it's going to hurt him significantly. So, but everybody kind of reads those differently, but it depends on the transgression off the field for sure.
I agree with that.
And again, I want to just touch on like that card eventually will probably get in. I don't know about you guys. I don't want to speak for you, but I'd be shocked if it got in with this year's class. But much like sort of him as a player, a lot of people don't know how great he was. I think same thing card-wise here. So I'm glad to see it on your guys' ballot, but I'd be surprised if it was one of the 10 cards that does get in. But I'm glad it's getting the recognition to be on the ballot. Whether it gets in or not, we'll have to wait and find out there. All right, next slide, guys. Hey, one of these guys I'm very familiar with, the 71 tops Bradshaw rookie, and as aforementioned, the 70 tops O.J. Simpson rookie. These guys, are definitely characters. Bradshaw still in the limelight, doing pregame and in-game studio analytics. Just a cat. That's the first word that comes, even as a Steeler fan, just a character. Right? He laughs at himself. We laugh at him. Sometimes he screws up names and teams and highlights. But 4 Super Bowl rings, right? O.J. Simpson, we don't have to, we know all about what happened off the field. And again, I don't know. 2 iconic cards for various reasons, guys. I won't even ask a line of questions. Just some of your thoughts on these two particular cards.
Well, I think Bradshaw obviously was the leader of those Steelers teams, as you know, John. I mean, how could you not put that card on there, right? I know Steelers have a great fan base in particular, so I'm kind of curious, putting the question back to you, is there any other card that's as desirable for a Steelers fan from that time period, other than the Bradshaw?
So here, I'm a Mean Joe Green guy. Like, Mean Joe Green's my guy. Believe it or not, I'm not a huge, if we're being this might sound sacrilegious. Like, I understand he was Super Bowl MVP a couple times, got the 4 rings. Probably wouldn't have got those without him. I'm not like an over the top Bradshaw guy. Just you look at some of the stats. I mean, he had some rough seasons too, where threw a lot of picks. It was a different game. So in fairness, it was a different game than it is today. But Mean Joe Green for me was my guy. So I would answer that with Mean Joe. Jack Lambert, just fire and brimstone, is another one on many Steeler fans' card list, to get a Lambert rookie. But you can't argue with the resume, right? Like we just said, 4 rings, Super Bowl MVP, kind of a just a happy guy, likes to laugh at himself and at other people. Not shy, he makes some comments. He's been critical of Mike Tomlin, called him a cheerleader, not the greatest coaches, man. So I almost appreciate, whether even if I agree with him or don't agree with him, I appreciate that he doesn't give that down the line vanilla opinion. He'll say what's on his mind. So I appreciate him. I think I appreciate him more now, guys, post career, than I did watching him as a young kid, and that sort of thing. But Mean Joe, for me, it was Mean Joe Green.
So what you're saying, John, then, in true Steelers fan fashion, you kind of harken back to some of the defensive greats a little bit more than the offensive players.
Yeah, I mean, for me, one of the reasons I'm a Steeler fan was the Mean Joe Coke commercial, and that kid was my same age at the same time, and we had a resemblance to each other. And so I sort of, because of that commercial, I'm a New York City kid, so it was sacrilegious. You either had to be a Giants or Jets fan, and that commercial came out when I was 5 or 6. I didn't want to be a Giants or Jets fan, so that was my craft to jump on and become a Steeler fan. Yes, they were successful in starting to build that dynasty at that time, but I also stayed on during those rough 80s too. So anyone that thinks, well, you got on when the getting's good, I didn't jump ship in the 80s when they were one of the worst franchises in the league. But Mean Joe Green, Jack Lambert, the receivers, Stalwart, Swan, I always sort of put them in my rankings ahead of Bradshaw. Some other people say you're crazy, John, but to each their own, right? But you can't argue with the hardware. All right, guys. Go ahead, Bart.
They won the 71 tops, right? The card stock itself,
yeah,
it's kind of up for the set, not white borders after a couple years of those. And obviously in his picture there, he's got the golden locks flowing. So it is a pretty recognizable one. 70 tops is not necessarily too appealing, but you had the OJ on there. But I'm a big fan of OJ's career, and that light blue jersey he wears in 1970. I don't really like the set, but then I come across that card and I'm like, oh, all right, maybe the set's not so bad. But 2,000 yards in a 14-game season is pretty legitimate. He was a monster, but we lose sight of that because we try not to bring attention to him. The media doesn't bring attention to him nowadays, so you don't remember all of the great things he did. And then the Bills just didn't win a whole heck of a lot back then either.
Yeah, that's the sad thing about the after career stuff with OJ. That's the first thing you're going to think of now, right? I think everybody, even young people, probably know more about the criminal stuff than OJ the football player, and that's the tragic part of that. Going to the next slide here, 2 cards from the same set, 62 tops, Fran Tarkington and Mike Ditka. Another guy, Tarkington's another player that's probably doesn't get. He really was the first, in my mind, one of the first guys to really kind of make scrambling quarterback a thing. And Mike Ditka, just all you gotta do is say Ditka, right? And you get it gets some sort of reaction or a thought will enter somebody's mind. And this is a great set again with the black, a lot of the black coloring and condition sensitive set and cards. And so I'd be Ditka. What do you think of the odds? Given as someone who doesn't vote, what do you think of the odds of one or both of these cards maybe getting in?
Maybe. I think that it's going to be on the border of maybe next year's vote or this year's vote, or towards the bottom of this year, I would think. Obviously, they both have some appeal. Ditka to Bears fans is synonymous with that team. And just the 62 set in general is just such a cool set. It's not just those two cards. You could have put the 62 Unitas on there, which is also a popular card, or the Jim Brown from that year. Yep. Obviously, there's the Ernie Davis as well that we haven't talked about yet. But just a great set, tough borders. You got the action shot, black and white on one side, the portrait shot on the other side. It's very condition sensitive. So, but yeah, both of those players are synonymous with their particular teams. Tarkenton with the Vikings and Ditka with the Bears. And I would guess they're not going to make it this year. That's just my guess. But I think they're on the border of this year and next year, kind of making it in.
Yeah, I agree. I think that Ditka's top of Fran a little bit. He carries the 62 set. He's the kind of the headliner now. 62 set does, deserve a lot of recognition, but I think he's kind of at the cutoff line. I don't think he's going to quite make it probably, but that's one of those cards and one of those players where the voting will really come down to the affinities of that voter, right? We have some icons that, just didn't quite make it in the first year. Only 10 could get in. So, people are always going to have, that's just a super recognizable card. But then you're going to get into pulling the heartstrings on what you're a fan of and stuff. You could be a Bears fan and maybe Ditka got a chance. You're a Packers or something else fan and maybe not so much, right? So we'll see.
Yeah, it's funny. Older guys like we are remember Ditka a little bit more as a player than some younger folks that just thought he was that fiery Chicago Bears coaching legend. He was a Hall of Famer before he ever even coached his first game in the NFL. But a lot of people don't even realize what kind of player he was before he even became a coach. And so that, to me, that even makes that card even more iconic. When you have a person that could get in just as a coach and get in just as a player, and they were great at both. You don't always see that. That's not very common in not just football, but in a lot of sports. I mean, you look at even baseball managers. Most really great baseball managers were terrible players. Here you have a great player and a great coach. And then he became, an analyst and was pretty good at that, very opinionated and animated and said what was on his mind. So, in a way, he could have been a 3-time Hall of Famer. He could have probably got in the media. He might get in the media Hall of Fame too. So he's definitely moved the meter kind of a guy. And like I said, with Tarkenton, just one of those quarterbacks that kind of overshadowed by his contemporaries and doesn't get, I think, enough credit. But that card might have to wait, like Scott said, another year. But you segue to it. I don't have a graphic because I have the card right here, but you mentioned it. I will tell you this. This is the one card I will omit out of the 10 that I did vote for. It's the 62 Ernie Davis rookie, and never wound up playing in the NFL. If you get a chance, watch the movie The Express, but I'll give you the Cliff Notes version for those that don't know the Ernie Davis backstory. First pick overall by the Browns, and they already had Jim Brown, who recruited Ernie Davis to Syracuse, where he had an All-American career. So that was all set to be a two-headed backfield monster, and unfortunately, tragedy struck when Ernie was diagnosed with leukemia, fought hard, unfortunately succumbed to the illness and never played a down of NFL football. The field here in Syracuse, the Dome, is called Ernie Davis Legends Field, and so for those of us here locally in Syracuse, he's an icon and a legend. And we talk about heartstrings, Bart. For me, I voted for this card. I'm going to politic a little bit. I think everyone should vote for this card. But it's an iconic. It's a sad story. If you learn about Ernie Davis, he was a great young man that was taken too soon, and it would have been just interesting what could have been, right, with Jim Brown and Ernie Davis in the same backfield. Think about potentially, I say the card's iconic now. Unfortunately, for tragic reasons, this card could have been iconic for stat reasons, and unfortunately, we'll never know that, right? We can only think about it. So this one's my sentiment, gets my vote, sentimentally, heartstrings, like Bart pointed out. I don't know. I hope it gets in for those reasons. If I'm betting, I don't know if this will be the year, but I'm doing my part to try to make it happen. Your thoughts, guys?
Thanks. That's a cool.
Yeah. And I don't want to make the whole show, the Ernie Day, but if you don't know about him already, learn about the not just the player he was, but the person. He took, he took some racial abuse here in Syracuse during his time here, and turn the other cheek, as they say, and now that every SU player that plays here plays on Ernie Davis Legends Field, not Jim Brown's Legends Field. It's Ernie Davis Legends Field, and Jim Brown came to that inauguration of the field and said that it should be. Jim Brown himself said this field should be Ernie Davis Legends Field, and have no problem with it not being Jim Brown. So that's the biggest endorsement you're going to get, and both of those guys are unfortunately now gone as well. So, all right, let's go on to the next slide, guys. One card here, 1963 Fleer Len Dawson rookie. Nice to see Fleer, cards getting a little love. Another quarterback that I think, when you look at the body of work, doesn't get probably the recognition that he does. I love the iconic picture of him on the bench smoking a cigarette during the game. But this guy was a great player. Then went on to do inside the NFL. Many people probably even just know him from that side of the fence. But it's a one card here on this slide. I'll have you, guys, anything you want to add here.
I love this card. I love that card. It's beautiful.
Yeah. Again, that card.
63 Fleer AFL issue. We had another one on the ballot last year, Allworth, but he got bounced being on the bottom spot. We were kind of surprised by that both. So, we reserve our right as commissioners to introduce it again in a future year. Beautiful card. I guess, just doesn't quite get the love as a player sometimes. The 60s and early 70s statistically for quarterbacks was very sloppy, but he still produced the wins and still was ahead of his peers at the time, hence the Hall of Fame induction, right?
Yeah, no doubt. We got a Len Dawson let's go from the chat room, so maybe that we'll vote. We'll see. Do you think being a Fleer card, guys? I want to, do you think being a Fleer card hurts that card's chances, or not? Maybe that's a little overstated.
I don't necessarily think so. I think that card is held in pretty high regard by especially Chiefs fans, early AFL collectors, that kind of stuff. So I don't think the fact that it's a Fleer card in particular hurts it. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, it's not the Fleer. It's just we know through, paying attention to the hobby and the sport itself, AFL just doesn't quite get the love that the NFL did at the time. And so the card is probably the votes are probably going to suffer a little bit for that. But great card, great issued set.
Yeah, comment here from Ray, right? Remember watching them? Yeah, and with Nick Bonacani, yeah. That was
Bonacani's
fun.
another issue guy. Yep.
Yeah, I remember when when that was the best incarnation of that show. I know it's went on from there, but that was, to me, that was the original and the best version. I have more slides. They're being uncooperative, guys. So this is the last slide I'll have, but I want to mention some of the cards from the slides that won't upload for me for whatever StreamYard's being mean to me. So this will be the last slide, but we'll have some other cards we can toss around. But let's put this up there. The 1955 Topps All-American, the Don Hudson rookie, and the Four Horsemen card, which is a short print. They're both short prints. I was shocked. One of the surprises, I believe, from last year for me was that the Four Horsemen card didn't get in. I know, first year, it's going to be the toughest to get in because no one's in yet, and there's so many iconic cards. But that card is pretty iconic. I thought it would maybe crack the top 10. It didn't. So I guess my question to you, is this the year for the Four Horsemen card?
To be honest, I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's a couple cards from that 55 Topps All-American set that made it in this year, because I think the Jim Thorpe is still out there.
Yep.
That didn't
Yeah, that's another one.
And there's the Don Hudson, who, an iconic card in its own right. So I won't be surprised if any of these made it in this year or early in next year's ballot.
Yeah, I think if we were doing a Hall of Fame for football sets, 55 All-American on that first ballot. I just think with the Four Horsemen, you kind of have to be a little bit more into the football. You got to be a little bit more of a historian of the football game to give it the appreciation. I just don't see it, garnering as many votes as maybe some of us purists think it should get. Because I think that Hudson, should get in first. I should think the Thorpe from 55 should get in there as well. So the Four Horsemen might have to wait a little bit, but an awesome card nonetheless.
One of my favorite sets in terms of design and look, and it's funny when someone brings like cards that they're trying to sell to, whether it be to my table or via phone call or text message, and these are in it. Even some of the lesser players, I try to get them. I've even, toyed with, I'm not a set guy anymore, guys, like a collector wise. And every once in a while, the thought pops in my mind about putting that set together. I've never done it. Probably won't because my wallet talks myself, my head out of doing it. But it's one of my favorite aesthetically pleasing sets to look at. The Thorpe card they're all great cards that you mentioned. I thought Thorpe even had a chance, do you without, there's a few cards on the ballot here from that set. Are you expecting at least one of them to get in this year, or would you be surprised if none of them got in?
I think the Thorpe was pretty close last year. I think it was just outside the top 10. I think it was maybe number 11 or 12. So that one I would expect for sure to make a run this year to get in. The other two, maybe towards the bottom of the list.
Yeah. I'd like to see Hudson get in as well. I think he's, as far as a player, in the NFL, I think he's definitely, top 20, which is what we're doing, 11 through 20, basically, right? And I love 55 All-American. So I'd love to see it get in as well. If it doesn't, it's going to be pretty high on the list next year for sure.
Yeah. All right. So like I said, my slides, they're not letting me, they let me put up I think 11 and I have 16. I'll mention the cards that are on the slides that it won't let me upload. We'll kind of go through these kind of in rapid fashion. The next slide I had would have been the 1950 Topps felt back Joe Paterno during his Brown days as a player. As someone who does shows, who attends shows, you rarely see this item. At least in my travels, I can count on one hand and probably on just a couple fingers how many times I've actually seen this card or pennant, if you will, in person. Just kind of any thoughts on this?
It's a tiny card. It's only 7/8
Yeah.
of an inch by like 1 7/16 or something like that. So it's very tiny, very condition sensitive. It has the brown pennant on the back, like where he went to college. And I think the combined PSA SGC population is somewhere around 100 or so on this card, maybe a little bit more, but it's not super available like you mentioned. But it is a card of basically a college football legend. And of course, he kind of, towards the end of his career, fell out of luster a little bit with some controversy as well, which may have hurt that card a little bit as far as the value goes. But that's ever since I first got into the football side of the hobby, that's been a card that's kind of been revered by longtime collectors just because it's so hard to find and certainly in decent condition.
Yeah, and it's kind of a neat set too, right? We were excited to add this one to show some diversity in the hobby as well, as opposed to just your traditional, this is a vintage Topps card of this year type of thing. So the felt backs and everything like that, pretty neat. And then Joe Paterno, most winning coach in NCAA, all the awards, 2-time national champ, pretty big deal. So we were very excited to add this to the ballot.
Yeah, no doubt. Like I said, you don't see these. It's iconic for that reason alone, and you factor in the legend that is Paterno, regardless of not to poo-poo the other stuff, but what he did as a coach at the college level is speaks for itself. So the next slide would have been the 1935 Chickles, the Rockney, and the 1948 Bowman, Kenny Washington. I'm familiar probably with Kenny Washington more than most just because of the connection with Jackie Robinson. I'm a huge Jackie Robinson guy. Not enough people know about Kenny Washington. Glad to see him make this list for card induction. Rockney is obviously more known when you mention both of these, people's names. Your thoughts on both of these cards?
Well, I think that Kenny Washington, we just wanted to add just again to educate and to not, as you mentioned, not a lot of people had heard of him, but he did play baseball with Jackie Robinson once upon a time at UCLA, and he was a great player there, an All-American at UCLA. Ended up not being able to go to the NFL right away after he graduated college because there was I believe it was a 12-year ban on African American players, and then Kenny Washington was the first to reintegrate into the NFL back in 1946. So very important card. That number 13 is retired by UCLA. By that time, unfortunately, his knees were pretty shot from playing in that other league and playing through college. So he only played, I think it was 3 years or maybe it was 4, something like that in the pros. But still one of those players that is just more so than anything, this Hall of Fame is a collection of stories. So you get people like Kenny Washington, Ernie Davis, like you mentioned earlier. They just have such great stories that's why they're in consideration for this Hall of Fame.
Yeah, well said. Canton is a museum of the story of football, right? And so we're kind of hoping for, the votes year after year to build up a collection that kind of does the same for the football card hobby. Kenny Washington means a lot. 48 Bowman's kind of a neat set as well. Kind of a cool picture. He was also rated better than Jackie Robinson when he was on the team with him. So he was a pretty legitimate baseball player. We could have gone with his 48 Leaf. I thought and we both kind of agreed his 48 Bowman was a little bit more iconic. Although the color of 48 Leaf is pretty cool as well. And then the Newt Rockney, it's hard not to know that name if you're a football fan at all, because they still talk about it on some Saturdays and football casts and stuff like that. But it is along the lines of that Four Horsemen a little bit too. Is you got to be able to reach back in the history of football and your memory banks and stuff. And so if you haven't lived through some of those things, it may not be quite as near and dear to you as some of the other cards.
Yeah, my next slide, like I said, I apologize, they're not uploading. But I also did not want to not talk about them necessarily. So, 1950 Bowman, Autogram, rookie. Autogram's another quarterback, right? That doesn't, I think, get as much love as he really should. This card to me, this card will get in. It's just when, right? I don't think there's any doubt. It's just what year does it happen? Your thoughts is could this be the year, or might it have to wait to another induction?
I think this is the year probably for this one. 50 Bowman's a pretty cool. He's a big time winner. I don't know why he doesn't get full credit in the hobby. I don't want to say discredited, but he doesn't quite get full credit in the hobby. Consistent NFL champion. Obviously, he had a whole host of stars around him because there's lots of Hall of Famers from those Browns teams. But big guy in the trajectory of the game and the forward pass, etc. So I think it gets in this year.
Yeah, I would agree with Bart. I think he just finished outside that top 10 last year. Maybe he was top 15 overall. So he has a good shot to get in this time around.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yep.
I agree. All right, the last slide and the last two cards that were on that slide, guys. 1951 Bowman, Tom Landry, rookie. 1952 Bowman Large, Frank Gifford, rookie. Almost like the autogram. I kind of look at these guys. These cards are getting overshadowed by a great list that you guys put together last year. No one will argue that these cards eventually will wind up in the football card Hall of Fame. Landry, known, a lot of people don't even realize he played for the New York Giants. Just know him as the fedora wearing Cowboys legendary coach. And Frank Gifford, one of the greatest players to do it, and then became more known, I think, for the broadcasting, and then being Kathy Lee's husband later on in life too. I don't think sometimes people lose sight that how great they were as players as well as for what they did post career. So I look at these sort of similar to the autogram card. These are no doubters that will eventually be in. Sort of your odds as non-voters to how you see this year.
Yeah, two great cards. It helps your hobby staying power by playing in New York for sure. And then, as you said, they stayed in relevancy through football for many, many years to come. And that's very helpful as well. And then, perk of the Giants uniforms, but bold colors. And so 51 and 52, those cards have very bold colors of the uniforms, red, white, and blue with the borders and everything else. So great looking cards, great poses. And so they are strong candidates. I think the Landry's going to be closer. I think the Giffords might be a little bit more distant, but very good cards. And I would not be upset if they got in.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd expect him in on this ballot. Maybe towards the bottom, or maybe in the next year. But I think I agree with Bart in that I think the Landry maybe gets in before the Gifford. But just speaking about those early Bowman sets in general, they're just beautiful cards. Even the 50 Bowman, 51, 52. If you just want to look at some super artsy football cards, those are the sets to look at. I'm just a big fan of all of those years there in the early 50s for Bowman football.
Guys, you mentioned some of the cards that just missed last year that you sort of expect to get in or have a good shot at getting in this year. The reverse of that question, is there some that just missed last year that you think off the top of your head might have a little drop just based on some of the new cards and that sort of thing? Does anything stand out?
I think those, again, because we're only on the second class, I think that, numbers 11 through 20 pretty strong. And so if they were strong in that first year's ballot, they're gonna stay that way. I think we'll have that issue in another year or two, where you'll see some larger fluctuations, just based on the popularity of the time and, whatever gets introduced. But I think for this year, it'll probably stay pretty consistent.
Just to spin off of that, guys, I have the list in front of me that were just missed out last year. For 11, it was the 50 Bowman autogram, 55 Topps All-American Jim Thorpe, 89 score Barry Sanders, 2000 playoff contenders Tom Brady, 48 Leaf, Sammy Ball, Gail Sayers rookie, Bradshaw. These were just outside the cusp.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll be interesting too, Ray. It's a good point, but to see how, I don't think all the ones you mentioned will necessarily get in this year, but it'd be interesting to see what percentage of them do. Obviously, when new candidates are on the board, that's gonna be a factor as well. So we'll see how that goes. Do you guys? Do you? I expect the answer to this, but I'll still ask the question. Do you expect? You guys have gained momentum with this, piggybacking off the baseball version of it. Do you expect more voter turnout? This sound like a political show here, but do you expect more voter turnout at the polls in this second go round?
Sure, we hope so. I'd like to think we did pretty well that first year. So, we're not chasing numbers and things, but we do want enough votes to, create the disparity where it's, a clear cut, number 1 through 10 for the given year and things like that. And, while we're not counting votes, it shows that we are doing our part and getting the hobby out to folks and continuing, to cultivate the community and stuff like that. So we are looking for that piece of it, and votes are kind of just the piece that shows us some of that.
Yeah, I think it's going to continue to grow. Last year we had 316 votes, which for a first year was really, really good. And I haven't checked lately what we're at right now, but I think with the sport, with this hobby growing in all aspects, I think football and other sports are going to continue for other people to look at, not just baseball cards. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. I'm hoping that it continues to grow. I think it will.
Yeah, no, I think it will too. That's why I do this show, and I got to do a better job, like just kind of baking it into the schedule and connecting with you guys, so we can just have it scheduled weeks in advance, and we can do a little bit more sort of pre-promo. Dr. Jim has been instrumental too in talking about it and having some of you guys on. So that's definitely going to help as well. I think it'll slowly, like a snowball going downhill, it'll start to get bigger and bigger, and as you do these, and and then add maybe other sports like you mentioned, Ray, as well.
Yep, for sure, definitely.
Well, guys, listen, what these guys do, while it's fun, I'm sure these guys are having fun with it. It's also some work involved, right? You've got to do your research and do your due diligence. So the best thing you can do for their hard work, right, is go to the ballot and cast your vote for your 10 favorite cards. I will tell you, one of the cards I did vote. One of them's Ernie Davis. I won't tell you the other 9, but you might be able to read. I will say this. I will tell you one card I didn't vote for, and we talked about it. I did not vote for the Terry Bradshaw, even being the state of. But that show you, and the reason I'm saying that is just that to show you, I'm trying to vote with my head and not just because Steeler appears on a card. So
yeah,
I didn't vote for Bradshaw. I voted for Ernie Davis and 9 other cards as well. You should pick your 10 and reward these guys for their efforts and putting in the work. Ray, I know you've put it in the chat, but I'll put it on the episode notes as well. This will come out. If you're watching us live, this will be out tomorrow morning in podcast only form. If you're listening to us in that respect, thank you as well. And you folks, please go out and vote.
And the voting ends on the February 6th is when the voting ends, and the Bart and Scott will come out and do the to show who got elected on the day before the Super Bowl, which would be Saturday, February 9th. And make sure everyone go out to the Sports Card Hall of Fame Network YouTube channel, and you'll see the video there and the link there to vote. Tell everybody, and stay tuned. Voting ends on February 6th. So, and thanks to, Mike, this baseball card life, he does a lot of hard work. And Victor, the rookie card specialist, for getting the word out. Bart and Scott, the 5 of us together, are making this thing grow, and we're having a lot of fun. And get out and vote.
Well, Bradshaw got at least one vote, as Orlando said.
Orlando.
Casted his vote. All right, but yeah, listen, I can't argue. Listen, he's a Hall of Famer, like we talked about. Well, thanks, guys, man. Continued success. Thank you for the work you put in it. We get the fun part. We just get to vote for the 10 cards we want to see get in. We have the easy part of it, but like I said, I hope to continue doing these shows and promoting this and getting the word out there, being even a very small part of what you're doing. So thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Yeah, you're welcome. If you're listening to this on the audio side only, and you want to know where to go to vote, the link is in the show notes. Just click on that. Boom, you're there. Pick your 10 cards, and you like they say in real politics, you can't complain about the hobby if you don't participate. So if you don't vote, you can't complain. So there you go. All right, guys. Thanks, and be interesting. You got about a week left to vote, and we'll see. Then we can debate who should have made it and who shouldn't have made it, like we do with the real Hall of Fames and all that fun stuff. So again, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.